I'm Somalia, the manager for our today's presentation. So we are going to present our material balance, ideology, and translation. So, but before that, allow me to introduce our group members, consisting of Jackie Ihsan Fardana, Gerald Kusi Umaidi, and me, Sofal Fadila. So, table of contents our presentation. First, the cultural trend in translation studies and ideology, gender and translation, hermeneutic process of translation, resistance through retranslation, post-colonialism and translation studies, post-colonialism review, Q&A session, and last conclusion. So, the first material will be delivered by me. Okay, let's take a look. The cultural trend in translation studies. The cultural trend in translation studies introduced by Susan Besnet and Adrili Petri. In 1990, shifted the focus from linguistic to cultural, political, and ideological dimension. So, it's influenced by Ibn Zuharturi and Hermans. It highlights the interdisciplinary nature of the field. So, there is an ideology. According to Hatim and mentions that state ideology encompasses the thesis, assumptions, belief, and value system which are shared collectively by social group. They distinguish between the ideology of translations that refer to translation overall approach or orientation in the translation process. It includes decision about whether to adapt the text to the target culture or we call it domesticating or to retain elements of the source culture that's called Parisianizing. So, like example, if the translation choose to domesticate the text, they might adapt cultural reference from the more relatable for the target of the audience. For example, translated an English book for the Japanese audience, the translation might change baseball, referring to sumo wrestling, to make it more culturally relevant and to the Japanese readers. So there is the transition of ideology, or we call the transition mediation in sensitive texts. This refers that the transition role in mediating the ideology embedded to the source text, especially in sensitive or controversial texts. It deals with how the transition handles the underlying assumptions, beliefs, value, and system present in the original text. We, like example, when the translating a political speech, translator might need to navigate the ideologies presented. If the speech contains ideologically charged language about sensitive issue, or translator must decide how to present these ideas to avoid misrepresentation or bias. Like this sentence, climate crisis, instead of translating into the less alarming in terms like climate change, so which could delete the intended message. So the genre of translation. The genre on translation studies critique the historical invisibility of the translator, highlight how the traditional metaphors frame translation as the sentence "las telas infernales," beautiful but unfaithful. This metaphor describes the translation as something beautiful but unbelievable, giving the expression that the translation is not faithful framing translation as critical political acts that recontextualize text and challenge dominant narrative. So that's all from my explanation. So the next material will be delivered by Carol.
Alright, so far, thank you for the opportunity. Here I will be explaining about the hermeneutic process of translation. There is 4 steps of the process of translation based on the hermeneutic. The first one is initiating trust. The translator approaches the SD with trust that there is a meaning there. The second one is aggression or penetration. The translator takes over or captures the foreign text. Number 3 is incorporation or embodiment. The text becomes part of the translator's language, and the last one is compensation or restitution. The translator restores something to the TT or to compensate for what has been taken away. The next slide is resistance through retranslation. The motive behind the retranslation strategy is to highlight the difference of authors, to make the original visible using the colonizer's own language, and to subvert the linguistic and political power structure. The most famous post-colonial theorist, Homi Bhabha, goes further and sees culture as untranslatable in the conventional sense. Rather than being an agglomeration of knowledge, culture is performed or enunciated, and translation is a major creative aspect of this process. And the last slide I will explain is post-colonialism and translation studies. One of the most striking points of contact between cultural studies and translation studies has been in the area of post-colonialism. A broad cultural approach to the study of power relations between different groups, cultures, or peoples, in which language, literature, and translation may play a role. Although the precise parameters of post-colonialism, in some instances known as subaltern studies, are somewhat difficult to pin down, and the term owes its origin to the studies of the former colonies of the European powers after the independence. Maybe that's all from my explanation. I will hand it back to Sofa.
Alright, thank you Carol for the explanation. So the next material will be delivered by Jeffrey.
Now, as was post-colonialism review. Post-colonial translation looked at how language was used during colonization to control people and how it was also used by the colonized to resist. Colonizers translated to spread their language and create negative image of colonized people, but the colonized also adapted their language to show their own identity. For example, in the Philippines, the Tagalog people changed Spanish religious Catholic terms to fit their culture. In Ireland, the English tried to erase the Irish language. In Spain, local language like Basque and Catalan struggled to survive. Similarly,